In the land of Muguland, where brotherhood once bound tribes, a storm was brewing. Unity turned to discord, peace to conflict, and dreams to despair. This is the tale of betrayal, loyalty, and the cost of ambition. This is the story of brothers at war.
Souls of the battlefield, where dreams go to die. The land soaked in tears as the fallen light. For the power and the glory, leaders make their stand, while brothers fall to brothers, staining the sacred land.
Episode 6, The Dramatic Declaration of Secession of the Okorobians from Muguland. In the early hours of a day that would etch itself into the annals of history, under the imposing shadow of the government house in Enugu, the air was thick with anticipation and the weight of destiny. The skies above were a tapestry of crimson and gold, as if the heavens themselves bore witness to the momentous occasion about to unfold. The grounds were teeming with people from all walks of life, soldiers in their regalia, civilians with hope in their eyes, and leaders with resolve etched on their faces. They had all gathered to hear the words of a man who had become the embodiment of their aspirations and fears. Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuma Ojukwu. Ojukwu stood at a makeshift podium, his figure commanding attention. His uniform, adorned with medals, reflected the early morning sun, creating an aura of authority around him. The crowd hushed as he cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping over the sea of faces before him, each one hanging on the precipice of history. "My fellow countrymen and women," he began, his voice resonating with a gravity that reached the furthest corners of the assembly. "We stand here today, united not by our fears, but by our resolve to forge a destiny of our own making. For too long, we have been shackled by the chains of oppression and drowned out by the cacophony of injustice." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd as Ojukwu paused, allowing his words to sink in. The air was electric with emotion, charged with the collective heartbeats of those who dared to dream of freedom. "We have been pushed to the brink, forced to witness the desecration of our sacred lands and the spilling of innocent blood. Our pleas for peace and equity have been met with deaf ears, and our cries for justice have echoed unanswered in the halls of power." The atmosphere grew tense, the weight of shared grievances palpable in the air. Ojukwu's voice grew firmer, imbued with a passion that ignited the hearts of his listeners. "Today we take the first step on a journey fraught with peril but illuminated by the light of hope. Today we declare our right to exist as a sovereign entity, to live in a land where our children can grow up without fear, where our culture can flourish without persecution, and where our future can be ours to shape." A collective breath seemed to be held as Ojukwu unfurled a scroll, the symbolic act not lost on anyone present. With a solemnity that bordered on the sacred, he read the declaration that would forever alter the course of their lives. "By the power vested in me by the people of this land, I hereby declare the secession of our territory from the nation of Muguland. Henceforth, we shall be known as the Republic of Okorobia, a nation founded on the principles of justice, equality, and the indomitable spirit of its people." The silence that followed was profound, a momentary pause in the fabric of time as the gravity of the declaration settled on the hearts of all present. Then, like a dam bursting, the crowd erupted into a cacophony of cheers, cries, and ululations. The air was filled with the sound of jubilation, but beneath the veneer of celebration lay an undercurrent of somber realization. Their path ahead would be fraught with challenges, sacrifices, and the bitter taste of struggle. Ojukwu stood tall, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, not of sorrow but of resolve. He had lit the torch of freedom. Now they must carry it through the darkness, guided by the hope of a brighter dawn for Okorobia. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting long shadows on the ground, the people of Okorobia stood united, ready to face whatever the future held. They had stepped into the annals of history, not as subjects, but as architects of their destiny, their declaration of secession a beacon of their unyielding desire for freedom and self-determination. Episode 7, Major General Wongo calls the bluff of the Okorobians. In the grand halls of the federal palace of Muguland in Laskidi, where the fate of Mugulians was often decided, Major General Wongo stood, a solitary figure against the vast backdrop of power. The news of Okorobia Nation's declaration of secession had reached him not through official channels but through the whispers of the wind, a storm brewing on the horizon of his country, threatening to split the land he had sworn to protect. His office, once a sanctuary of order and command, now felt like the very eye of the storm, papers scattered like the leaves of autumn, each one bearing tidings of dissent and division. The declaration from Okorobia was more than just words on parchment. It was a defiance of the unity of Muguland, a challenge to the very foundation upon which his government stood. Major General Wongo, with his military decorum and unyielding demeanor, paced before the large, imposing map of Muguland that dominated one wall of his office. His fingers traced the borders of Okorobia, a region now declaring itself a nation, its leaders determined to carve their destiny apart from his rule. "The audacity," he muttered under his breath, the word a thunderclap in the silence of the room. "To fracture the unity of Muguland, to rend the fabric of our collective identity." Advisors and military commanders filled the room, a council of war by any other name. Their faces were etched with concern and the gravity of the moment, knowing well the storm that was about to break upon them all. "We must respond," Wongo declared, his voice a firm, unwavering command that brooked no dissent. "We cannot allow the secession of Okorobia to go unchallenged. It would spell the end of Muguland as we know it, a precedent for chaos and disintegration." The room was charged with tension, a collective breath held, as all eyes turned to him, waiting for the orders that would inevitably lead to conflict. Major General Wongo, standing tall and resolute, knew the weight of the decision that lay upon his shoulders. "We will offer them one last chance for dialogue," he began, a sliver of hope in the midst of gathering clouds. "But prepare for military action. Mobilize our forces, secure our borders, and make ready for the possibility of war. We must defend the sovereignty of Muguland at all costs." The orders were met with a somber acknowledgement, the air heavy with the unsaid knowledge that peace was a fleeting shadow likely to be swept away by the winds of war. The general's heart was heavy, for he knew the cost of conflict, the blood that would be shed by sons of Muguland against their brothers in Okorobia. Major General Wongo, his resolve hardened by the inevitability of the path before him, ordered the full mobilization of the Muguland armed forces. As the first light of dawn crept across the land, painting the skies with the hues of fire and blood, the forces of Muguland stood ready, a formidable bulwark against the secessionist tide. Major General Wongo, atop a hill overlooking the expanse that divided them from Okorobia, watched as the future of his nation hung in the balance, a tapestry of hope and despair, woven with the threads of impending war. "This is the price of unity," he whispered to the wind, a solemn vow to preserve the integrity of Muguland, even as the drums of war thundered in the distance, heralding the onset of a conflict that would mark the land with its sorrow and its scars. The stage was set, the actors ready, for a drama that would unfold in the annals of history, a testament to the tragedy and the triumph of the human spirit in the face of division and despair. Episode 8, The Profile of the Top Dogs of War. As both sides continued to beat the drums of war, both sides quietly assembled a team of soldiers who would prosecute the war if no accommodations for peace could be reached by the parties. On the Muguland side, here is a brief profile of the top 8 soldiers who led the war for the Muguland nation. Yabuku Wongo. As the head of state and commander-in-chief of the Muguland armed forces, Yabuku Wongo played a critical role in leading the Muguland government's efforts to crush the secessionist movement. Despite his young age, Wongo's leadership and strategic thinking helped to keep the Muguland military cohesive and motivated throughout the conflict. Muri Suleiman, a rising star in the Muguland military, Muri Suleiman played a key role in several successful operations against Okorobian forces, including the capture of the strategic city of Port Harcourt. His bravery and military acumen made him a highly respected figure within the Muguland military. Benja Scorpion, known as the Black Scorpion. Benja Scorpion was a tough and aggressive commander who played a critical role in the Muguland military's victories in the early stages of the war. His unorthodox tactics and willingness to take risks earned him a reputation as one of the most effective commanders on the Muguland side. Ebora Obajid, a highly decorated officer in the Muguland military, Ebora Obajidi played a key role in several major battles of the war, including the capture of the key city of Onitshaara. Many years after the war, Ebora Obajid would go on to become Muguland's double president and play a critical role in shaping the country's political landscape. Alani Akinmad. A highly respected officer in the Muguland military, Alani Akinmad played a key role in several major battles of the war, including the capture of the Okorobian capital of Enugu. After the war, he became a vocal advocate for democracy and human rights in Muguland. The Okorobians too have their own dream team of officers who would do mayhem for their side when it came to all-out war with Muguland. Major General Chukwuma Ojukwu. As the leader of the secessionist state of Okorobia Nation, Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu played a central role in the conflict. A charismatic and highly respected figure, Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu was seen as the embodiment of Okorobian resistance to Muguland oppression. Philip Efong. As the second-in-command of the Okorobian military, Philip Efong played a key role in organizing and directing the secessionist forces. After Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu fled to Ivory Coast towards the end of the war, Efong became the acting president of Okorobia Nation and played a critical role in negotiating the ceasefire with the Muguland government. Major Ojukwu Jr., the son of Okorobian leader Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu, was a high-ranking officer in the Okorobian military who played a key role in several major battles of the war. After the war, he went into exile in Ivory Coast along with his father. Joseph Banjoko, a Yorubawa officer by birth, turned into a prominent Okorobian military leader. Joseph Banjoko played a critical role in several key battles of the war. However, he was accused of plotting a coup against Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu's leadership and was executed by firing squad in the second year of the Civil War. Alex Madibo, a senior officer in the Okorobian military, played a critical role in organizing and directing the secessionist forces. He commanded the Okorobian Army's 14th Division, which was responsible for defending the city of Onitshaara during the war. These 10 soldiers were among the most important and influential figures in the Muguland Civil War, shaping the course of the conflict and its aftermath. Their leadership, bravery, and strategic thinking helped to define the war and its impact on Muguland history. More on some of these distinguished dogs of war later as we revisit the heroes of the fratricidal war. Episode 9: The Civilian Brains Behind the Warrior Soldiers. Here are profiles of 5 key civilians on each side of the Muguland Civil War who played significant roles in the conflict. On Muguland's side were eminent and highly accomplished civilians who propped up the military with their minds, their clout, and used their political capital among the citizens to rally support for the war effort. Chief Obajimi Awolowo. As the finance minister during the war, Chief Awolowo played a key role in implementing economic policies that helped to cripple the Okorobian economy. He was responsible for the implementation of the starvation policy and the currency change gambit, which was intended to weaken the Okorobian population, destroy the fledgling economy of the rebel nation, and force them to surrender much earlier than they would have. Chief Awolowo proved to be an invaluable member of the council. He had a deep understanding of the Muguland economy, and he proposed a number of policies that helped to stabilize the currency and provide resources for the war effort. He also had a keen understanding of the Muguland people and their cultures, and he proposed initiatives that helped to win over the hearts and minds of the people at a critical time. He was also prominent in the efforts to unify the country after the war. He was often regarded as the best president Muguland never had. At the end of the day, Chief Awolowo ended up paying a steep political price later for his brilliant management of the economy and the strategies he proposed that helped shorten the war. Though the Yorubawa Lion was only the finance minister of Muguland during the war and didn't really make any decisions for the men in uniform during the war, the people of Okorobia Nation never forgave him for his pivotal role in the war. As far as most of the Okorobians were concerned, he was the brains behind some of the most devastating strategies of Muguland during the war. Many Okobians are still convinced to this day that but for the prodigious intelligence of Chief Awolowo and his evil advice to the military, the Okorobians would have surely won the War of Brothers. The bitter aftertaste of the War of Brothers continued to reverberate for decades, even to this day. The Okorobians later punished Chief Awolowo for his patriotic role in the war by rejecting him wholesale at the polls in Okorobia lands, when the reunited country returned to civilian rule about a decade after the bloody war. Among other factors, the Okorobian repeated rejection at the polls was one of the key reasons Chief Awolowo never achieved his dream of being the president of a united Muguland. Even when opportunities emerged for the Yorubawas and the Okorobians to form an alliance to wrestle power from the Awosas in the north, the spectre of the bitter experience of the civil war hung too thickly in the air and ultimately derailed any good intentions among the tribal leaders. Alhaji Kam Selem. As the Secretary-General of the National Party of Muguland, Selem was responsible for organizing support for the Muguland government during the war. He played a key role in mobilizing support from Muguland civilians, particularly from the Awosa regions in the north. Chief Adeyemi Alakija. As a prominent Muguland businessman, Alakija used his wealth and influence to support the Muguland government during the war. He was involved in fundraising efforts and donated money to support the military effort. Ikinola Adesola. As the governor of Yorubawa region during the war, Adesola played a key role in mobilizing resources and support for the Muguland military. He worked to secure food and supplies for the military effort and coordinated with other regional governors to support the war effort. Jeremy Udoji. As the head of the Muguland Civil Service, Udoji played a key role in coordinating the government's administrative efforts during the war. He worked to maintain the government's ability to function in the midst of the conflict and helped to organize relief efforts for civilians affected by the war. The Okorobian side also boasted a parade of highly intelligent and accomplished individuals who acted as strong civilian support and brains behind the warring soldiers. These include Chief Odogwu Igo. As the finance minister of Okorobia Nation, Odogwu Igo was responsible for managing the breakaway state's economy during the war. He implemented policies designed to support the Okorobian military and civilian populations and was instrumental in securing international support for the Okorobian cause. Ukpabi Akisa. As the administrator of the Okorobian civil government, Akisa played a key role in managing the breakaway state's political affairs during the war. He worked to establish diplomatic relations with other countries and to secure international recognition for the Okorobia nation. Chinua Ebecha. As a prominent Okorobian writer and intellectual, Achebe was a vocal critic of the Muguland government during the war. He used his platform to advocate for Okorobian independence and to raise awareness of the humanitarian crisis in Okorobia nation. Adaobi Tricia Nwabani. As the daughter of an Okorobian soldier, Nwabani grew up with a deep understanding of the impact of the war on civilians. As an author and journalist, she has written extensively about the war and its ongoing legacy. Christopher Nwakobia. As a prominent Muguland poet and intellectual, Nwakobia was a vocal supporter of the Okorobian cause. He served as an advisor to Okorobian leader Major General Chukwuma Ojukwu. He fought and died on the front lines of the conflict. Episode 10, The Diplomatic Gamesmanship. The Muguland Civil War was not just fought on the battlefield. It was also fought in the diplomatic arena, as the Muguland government and the breakaway state of Okorobia nation sought separate recognition from the international community. Though the civil war in Muguland was between local tribes, there was a lot of international interest in the blood feud of the brothers. Many international countries have always coveted the rich resources of Muguland, and all had interests in the outcome of the war. Also, the warring sides needed major international powers to support them in legitimizing their side of the disagreement, in addition to providing them serious support to prosecute the war. For the Muguland government, diplomatic recognition was critical. They wanted to be recognized as the legitimate government of Muguland and to gain support for their efforts to quash the Okorobians' secession. They launched an intensive diplomatic campaign, sending envoys and diplomats to countries around the world to make their case. They argued that Okorobia nation was an illegal, illegitimate state that was a threat to the unity and stability of Muguland. They cited Okorobian nation's declaration of independence and their refusal to recognize the authority of the Muguland government as evidence of their secessionist aims. The Muguland government also sought to win the support of international organizations such as the United Nations and the African Union. They argued that Okorobian nation's secession attempt violated international law and the principles of self-determination. On the other hand, the Okorobian side also fought hard for diplomatic recognition. They argued that they were a legitimate, independent state that deserved to be recognized by the international community. They cited their unique culture and history, as well as their struggle against what they saw as Muguland oppression, as evidence of their right to secede. Okorobian nations' leaders made trips to foreign countries seeking recognition from sympathetic governments. They argued that Muguland was a repressive, dictatorial state that was oppressing Okorobians, and that the international community had a moral obligation to support their cause.
In the ashes of war lies a lesson etched in blood. The ties that bind can be undone by the hands of pride and fear. Yet even in the deepest wounds, the seeds of unity may take root, if only we choose to nurture them. The story of Muguland is not one of defeat or victory. It is a story of survival and the enduring spirit of a people.
But the reasons grow dimmer in the still of the night. We were sons of the soil, with a bond no sword could sever. Now we wander through the ashes, as strangers forever.